Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm glad that you found us here on YouTube as we are all survivors, post narcissists. And as you can tell from the title, I am going to talk about something very different today. Usually I only talk about my own story, and in my recovery I haven't had to post for a while because I really truly believe I'm healed from narcissistic abuse. So I haven't posted in a while, but there is the Chris Watts story out there, and it really bothers me how so many people, I think, have this wrong, because anyone who's suffered from narcissistic abuse can recognize what everybody in that situation went through. So this is my take on it as someone who can recognize narcissism and know what it's like to be inside a relationship of someone who's a very covert narcissist. Now remember, a covert narcissist is one of the most nicest people you'll meet, especially if you can offer them something and give them something. So it can be very hard for the outside world to recognize a narcissist unless you actually have a relationship of some sort with them. So let's get into it. Let's talk about Chris Watts, who is serving, I think, 3 life sentences for killing his 2 daughters and his wife. So let's go to the beginning. Like, I'm not going to give hard, detailed accounts from court records and stuff like that. I've heard the story several times. I, of course, watched the Netflix production that was done on him, and there has been a lot of YouTube videos done on them as well. So there's a lot of information out there, but people are getting it wrong, and I want to give you my perspective of someone who has been a survivor of abuse. So if we go back to the beginning of their story, Chris Watts was an empath. He's very introverted. He was very quiet. Everyone talked about how, he was a man of very few words. And his wife, Shanann, when he met her, she was very outgoing, very much loved being in the public eye, loved the camera, okay. And this is what the public sees. But you have to understand that in the beginning of a relationship, with a narcissist, you are getting love bombed. And as you can maybe figure out at this point, when I'm talking about this story, it's Chris Watts who's the empath, and it's his wife, Shanann, who is the narcissist, okay? So she love bombed him at the beginning, and for a guy that's very intelligent, very quiet, and very empathic, he did not have a lot of experience with women. And when this woman, Shanann, came into his life, she's beautiful, she's outgoing. I mean, most introverted people will marry extroverted people, and they have this balance. And so I'm sure he was absolutely taken with her at the beginning of their relationship. And during the love bombing stage, doesn't matter what kind of narcissist you're with, whether it's an extroverted or introverted, or it's a covert or an overt narcissist. The love bombing is still love bombing. You are sucked in. It is a vortex, and you fall in love. This is your soulmate. It's your everything. So they got married, and not long after they married, they had 2 kids. And this is what the world knows. But when you actually start hearing about the stories about what Shanann was like during their marriage, after the love bombing stage was over, the devaluing of Chris Watts by her was horrific. She would control the money, like barely giving him any money, like almost giving him an allowance. And she did start off as a nurse, and like when people hear that, oh well, she's a nurse, they're so, how can a nurse be a narcissist? I'm like, if you know how many nurses out there are horrific people, not all nurses are these nice people. Some of them are mass murderers even. Like, so don't let the fact that she used to be a nurse say, well, she can't be a narcissist. She used to be a nurse. No. Remember, covert narcissists can be these are the people that are hidden amongst us that are narcissists. They are your nurses and doctors. They're your pastor or priest. They're your counselors. They're your yoga instructors. They're your gurus. These are the most damaging, evil people that are hidden in our society. Okay, so I don't know what level Shanann narcissism was, but I know that there came a point in their relationship where he was completely being devalued, and it was all about her and her image and who she was and the way they structured their life. So let's just dive in a little bit to what I know, what their inside of their marriage looked like, what came out in the reports, from what other people have said, and what the trial was in interviews with the people that knew Shanann. So narcissists need to be fed. Okay, so how does Shanann get fed? She went from being a nurse to doing a multi-level marketing business. And this story actually became like the Chris Watts and Shanann, and we'll get to Nicole later on. The reason why this story, I think, hit so big in our public eye, first of all, everyone involved is beautiful. And also Shanann was very public with her life. Okay, so my ex would be on Facebook constantly when Facebook first came out. He would need to post every day. And so when me living through that, and I was kind of confused in my relationship when I saw that, like, what are you doing? Like, why? It's not necessary. And he would put it on the guides of, well, I'm promoting my business, so from where I am now, looking back at them, it's like, no, you don't need to do that. Post what you do and eat for breakfast that morning in order to promote your business. Okay, so in hindsight, I saw that as that was part of his narcissism, needing to be fed, needing people to see him the way he lived his life and admire it. So knowing what I know now, I apply that to the situation I'm looking at with Chris and Shanann. Like, Shanann was posting everything about her life, like she's got this amazing life of success, and the house and the husband and the kids and her business, and everyone follow me and join me. And when you actually start looking at all her posts on things like Facebook, it is very posed and unnecessary. You can kind of see her like dressing up her kids in matching outfits and doing this big photo op. And when you first look at that, you're like, well, she loves her kids. And you look how great of a mother she is, and look at all the things they're doing. But when you're in these relationships, you understand that all these pictures you see are not them. They're not pictures showing you how great your life is. It's you posing, you have a great life, and taking pictures of it so you can post it. And there's a very big difference. And when you've been with someone who is a narcissist that does this, you can recognize it. Okay, so I would almost venture a guess that when you see all these pictures of, her girls dressed up and them doing some sort of plaything, like say they're like decorating a cake or something and doing this big thing, and it looks amazing, great mother, daughters are smiling, everything. But behind the scenes, I would almost guarantee that this was all propped and staged. The only reason she dressed up her kids and did this cake is so she can take pictures of it and post it so other people can see it. And then she would get comments and likes and, fuel from other people about what she's doing. Mothers don't need that, love their kids and love giving them experiences. They don't need to post pictures of it all the time. And if they take pictures of it, sometimes, mostly it's just for them. Like, they want the pictures, they want the memory. But in Shanann's case, she's doing all this so she can post it and so she can get likes and use it for under the guise of like promoting her business. And if you look at other things in their life, I guess Shanann would throw these huge parties, promotional parties for her business. This multi-level marketing business. And it turns out that like she would spend all their money on these parties, like sometimes spending thousands of dollars for the food and the decorations and the the booze, whatever, on all these parties. And it was money that they did not have. They're spending their last dollar to throw these parties just to have the image that they had the perfect life. Shanann needed to be in the spotlight. And so she was always having all these people around her that were, on, the multi-level marketing tiers underneath her, and rallying this huge network around her. And she was devaluing her husband. Her husband would be, in these parties upstairs with the girls, trying to protect the girls from all the chaos that was going around, and he had a lot of bonding time with his girls. And this is the way their life went. Now, and I'll give you another example of things that I know. So, it's a mother's dream to stay at home with her kids and raise her kids and not have like a daycare or a nanny or something like that. And it's almost like an effort for a family to be successful enough where you can actually have the mom stay at home with their kids and raise their kids. But when you're dealing with a narcissist, kids are very draining on you. They're not providing you with anything. Unless you're taking pictures that you can put on YouTube that you can get fuel from other people. Kids are harsh on a narcissist because all they do is they need attention, they need care. So if we're a narcissist, this is absolutely exhausting. So Shanann would put her two girls in daycare, a very expensive daycare. I think it was like $500 a week, and that was barely any money that they had. They had to like really work hard just to pay for the daycare. Now, from the outside world, you might think, wow, she's so successful at her business and is making this money, and she's spending it on her girls. She's spending it to put her girls in daycare. But if you know a narcissist, you know that a narcissist will actually get rid of their kids because their kids are draining on them. So, and Shanann worked from home. So you have a mother that is working from home who barely has the money and is spending that money to get rid of her girls, to have someone else raise them and take care of them so she can have her life. It was her selfishness that caused the strain on their marriage, spending money to send her girls away when she was at herself at home. And unless her girls were involved in photo ops in front of people or in private photo ops, it was actually Chris taking care of the girls. And so she can run her business. And so, if you know narcissism and are witnessing things like this, it's so obvious to us. And so there's Chris and Shanann. Chris is very quiet. He kind of like, when you're an empath, you can take a lot of abuse. Even though when you're being devalued like this and being made to feel like you're only there for the purpose of providing for me kind of attitude, like you can just take a lot of abuse. And especially if you do have a family that you are caring for. And I believe that Shanann was very abusive to him and to the girls. The fact that alone, when you're working from home, you're a mother working from home, and you're almost working just to send your girls away to daycare, that is a big red flag. That is a big sign. That should be a sign to everybody that this is not something that mothers do. If you're working from home and you have the ability to raise your family at home, that's what you do. You don't take your last dollar to send them off to daycare. Anyway, get off the soapbox there for a bit. So let's move on to other things. Narcissistic rage. Shanann apparently was famous for it. So a big thing that all narcissists do is isolation. She isolated Chris. She actually at one point forbid him to see his own family because as a narcissist, if you have your main supply, the last thing that you want is your main supply to give fuel and attention to someone other than you, and that includes family. So she completely isolated him from his family and moved far away. Wouldn't allow him to go visit his own family. She kept her girls away from their grandparents. This is a very controlling narcissistic tendencies to isolate and control, and then narcissistic rage would flare up. And the thing is, because a narcissist always needs fuel, the main supply, like Chris's parents, don't provide her with any fuel at all. In fact, they're taking fuel away from her and her family and the people in her life. So she wanted to stay away from them. They might not have seen that as a narcissistic trait. Like, his parents might not look at Shanann as a narcissist, because they might just look at her as like, oh God, why did our son have to marry someone so abusive or controlling or mean or enraged? Or, they might put a lot of labels on it, but they would need to actually look at her as she's a narcissist that needs fuel, and we don't give her fuel, so she wants nothing to do with us, and she's going to stay away from us. And there was this famous event where she went to the East Coast, and she went to the grandparents, and this was something that they don't normally do. The grandparents didn't have that much access to her girls. So of course, it was like a hair trigger for something to go wrong. And anyone out there that has been in a relationship with a narcissist know that they're always on a hair trigger to force any special occasion to go wrong and make it all about them. I mean, it is a given for any event, any Christmas or birthday or wedding, it doesn't matter what it is, a vacation. They will make things go wrong just so they can get out of whatever situation it is and make it be about them. And you'll witness narcissistic rage in those situations. And apparently, I guess there was this thing about a peanut allergy with ice cream or something else. Well, and whether it was about that or not, it is an excuse for a narcissist to go into a rage and take a hold of the situation and get away from someone who would try to take fuel from you or be draining on you. So this was like a very, I guess, famous event that happened to them. And I'm sure Chris's family would see the narcissism about how can you be so selfish as to not allow these kids to have access to their grandparents, and so let's leave this platform for a while of Shanann and her abuse towards her own daughters, Chris, and his family. Okay, so let's look at the perspective of Chris for just a bit, about the abuse he endures from Shanann. Her rage, her controlling, her need to be in the spotlight, her need to spend all the money. I remember my ex, it didn't matter how much money he spent. He would buy himself all these clothes and expensive shoes and equipment, and didn't matter what he spent money on. It was all forgiven because it was for us, our family, our business, he could do whatever he wanted. But if I ever wanted to, say, go to the gym and spend money on a gym membership, he would just kind of look at me. He's like, how can you be so selfish and take that away from our household? For yourself. Like, it's, everything I wanted to do was selfish. If I wanted to go see my family or travel, that was selfish. But if he wanted to travel, well, this is like a filming opportunity. This is an opportunity for him to make money in a talk that he would give or teach or do something, so you can kind of see this. And Shanann would take all these trips and stuff for her business and spend all this money. But I bet you if Chris ever wanted to take a weekend to do something, well, you selfish asshole, how can you take such money and spend it on yourself away from our family? You know what I mean? So when you see what went on in their relationship, it's just so obvious. So from Chris's perspective, he's getting abused every day from his wife, and at this point, he's being absolutely devalued. There's nothing he's no longer really providing fuel to her. He's actually, a lot of his efforts are going towards his job, towards his kids, and not to her. And because of this, that's how come she slips into narcissistic rage so easily, and then needs outside fuel. So she's having all these big expensive parties about her job and stuff like that for fuel. And so into Chris's life comes this woman, Nikki. He was at his work, and he's still the same person. He's very shy. So he's not going to, pursue this woman. And I guess Chris was at that point getting into shape, and he was at the age where you become like, sometimes men in their late 30s and stuff like that, they, if they're working out and taking care of themselves, that's when they come into when they're the most handsome, I would say. And I think that's another reason why this story became popular. So this woman, Nikki, and again, if you know narcissism, this woman, Nikki, I think most of the public at large out there knows that Nikki's also a narcissist. So in this woman, and you find out after everything's said and done, when everyone looked at all her emails and her text messages and interviews with all her friends and everything like that, when this woman came into his life, a narcissist, when they meet someone that they see as grade A fuel supply, they become like almost obsessed, and they go into hyperdrive, like love bombing mode. And during the love bombing, they are hyper vigilant to everything about you, to capture you. They're predators. And she saw Chris as the prey, the perfect prey, grade A fuel supply to a narcissist. He was good looking, he had a good job, he was very caring, very empathic. So someone like that got so much fuel to give. And so she ended up like researching everything about him. Like it was later known that she went on to, when they looked at her history of her computer, she went on to like Shanann's like Facebook feed and went all the way to like the beginning, like her first post ever. And this is all before the first date that she ever had with Chris, and she would look at everything that Chris liked, what his likes were, what his mannerisms were, and then she would start researching it. Like, I guess he liked like classic cars or something, like car shows. So she would be like Googling where the car shows were, what cars are good, like things like that. Like, so she would have something to have in common with him for love bombing, And so you're looking at this woman, Nikki, and you start to change the way you look at her. You're like it's not just like femme fatale. As a narcissist, these women are incredibly dangerous to men like Chris. Okay, so she comes into his life and starts love bombing him, luring him and giving him thoughts of escape from his abusive marriage. Even though Nikki doesn't know that he's in an abusive marriage, she doesn't need to know that. But she's putting on this persona that she can give him this amazing life. So they start dating and having sex. And anyone listening to this will know sex with a narcissist is unbelievable. And I'm sure Chris had it with Shanann. But with Nikki, who was, she was good looking. Again, another reason why I think this story became famous. And she was in great shape. And having sex with a narcissist during a love bombing stage is almost life-changing. I mean, it is such mind-blowing sex. It changes you, and it's meant to. So I'm sure she like blew his mind. Apparently they were having sex like 4 times a day. So, and this was at a time, like there was this period where she planned her attack, like literally planned it. So Shanann was taking the girls to the East Coast to visit his family and her family, and this gave her the opportunity to love bomb. And she went in for the kill. Like having sex 4 times a day, mind-blowing sex, giving him, like painting this picture that they could have this amazing life together, and making him feel like, okay, when you are someone like Chris who's in an abusive relationship with a narcissist, being devalued, made to feel like you're nothing as a man, that brings you to a low point like you wouldn't be able to believe. Like I talk with a lot of men I do a lot of counseling with people that are suffering narcissistic abuse. And honestly, the men that are my clients, they suffer horrific damage from some of these women that have abused them with sex, that have given them mind-blowing sex to the point where your brain is basically getting hit and flooded with so much feel-good chemicals. They're basically, as far as their brain is concerned, they're getting like hooked on heroin. Okay, during this time, during the love bombing time, like they get almost addicted to them. The sex is mind-blowing, and this is very much on purpose. That's why it's a bomb. It's a love bomb. It's not like tiny little trickle of sex here and there. No, it's going to blow your mind. And for someone like Chris, who was being devalued and made to feel like nothing by his narcissistic wife, Shanann, and then be love bombed by a second narcissist, my God, can you imagine what that did? Well, let me tell you, it led to 3 murders, okay? Because of that. An empathic man being devalued by one narcissist in a relationship and then getting love bombed by another narcissist at the same time. Okay, this is what the situation I believe Chris was in. Okay, so the love bombing stage, when you get love bombed by a narcissist, it is not normal. All of you who are listening to this channel or listen to anyone's story of being love bombed by a narcissist, it's extremely fast. Like, relationships are not supposed to move this fast. Apparently within just a couple weeks, this girl Nikki was spent hours looking at wedding dresses. Okay, and she's having an affair with a married man. She damn well knows what's going on here. And yet she is so confident in her love bombing campaign. She's looking at wedding dresses because they're going to get married. And this is only, again, I think 4 weeks maybe. She started talking about she was going to give him a son. 4 weeks. Only a relationship with a narcissist would ever move that fast and allow something like even conversations like this to happen. And I want to make another point. And this, when I was listening to the Chris Watts story, this hit me like a ton of bricks. What happened, one of the events, because in the interviews that they did in like the police station and stuff like that, when they asked Nicole about when has she ever been to his house, going back into the relationship, and she was all innocent. She had no idea that, as far as she was concerned, they were getting a divorce, like she damn well knew that they were not getting a divorce. She damn well knew that the state of their relationship, and she was coming in as a predator. Okay, and when they were asking if she had ever been to his house, there was an incident. And when I looked at the backstory of this incident, I knew exactly what it was. Because it happened to me, it'll happen to anybody out there. Okay, so when you're in the love bombing stage, remember, they are on a campaign to capture you. And at the very beginning, you're not used to having someone around this much. Like, they are on you, like every minute, every hour available, they are on you, praising you, giving you love, having sex, doing things for you, cooking you meals, whatever it is. It's intense. And when you're not used to that, there will always be a day, and if anyone listening, you think back to the love bombing beginning of the relationship, there will always be a day where you take a break, because you're not used to this. And it doesn't matter how infatuated you are at the time and want it or high on the feelings that you're getting. There's going to come a day when you take a bit of a break. Well, in the middle of a love bombing campaign, there are no breaks as far as the narcissist is concerned. So it doesn't matter what happens. They're going to pursue you through whatever pullback you try to give. And apparently there was a pullback moment in their relationship where the conversation got weird one day, and even though Nicole and Chris were planning to spend the day together, it was like 4th of July or something, he decides he's going to go home and spend the day alone. And as a narcissist during your love bombing campaign, she's not having it. She just randomly shows up at his house after he already told her he was going to take the day for himself, because she can't handle it. She cannot let a minute slip by. Otherwise she might lose her campaign. So and that was the day she showed up at his house. And it must have been weird. It's like, what are you doing here? I'm taking the day. and she made this excuse that she was going over there to help him with, like, come up with a meal plan and smoothies and stuff like that. And that was crap. That was absolute bullshit. She went over there because she's in the middle of a love bombing campaign, and he decided to take a day, and she couldn't handle it, and she went over there. And so, and they had a bit of a fight because she started to realize, oh, this is, her work's cut out for her. He's more involved in this marriage than she thought, maybe. And she pretends to leave and hoping that Chris will follow her, and he wouldn't because he wanted a day. And that was like the first hint of the narcissistic mask slipping, I think, was that day. And I remember even in my relationship, there was in the middle of the love bombing stage. So we hadn't spent a day apart yet. In like every night we slept in the same, we weren't living together. I slept at his house, and I had to get some minor surgery done, and it was very private. And after going to the doctor that day, I'm like, I need to just go home and rest and take a day. So I told him that I was just going to stay at home. I didn't tell him what had happened. And he shows up with sandwiches, like these vegan sandwiches. I'm like, so I'm trying to like I'm on painkillers and stuff like that. I'm in bed, and he's getting in bed with me trying to give me these sandwiches. I'm like, what the fuck? Like, I'm trying. So I think I remember that happening to me. And when I heard about Nicole showing up at Chris's house when he tried to take a day, I'm like, oh my God, that happens at least once in the middle of a love bombing campaign. And I was listening to this other channel about narcissism, and this guy, he talked about, he was in an interview, he gives advice and coaching on narcissistic abuse, and he was in an interview talking a little bit about his story. And in his story, he talked about how during the love bombing stage, when this woman was just, so much sex, so much attention, and he tried to take a day, and then she calls him in the evening, and they start talking, and in the conversation, he goes, I'm outside your apartment, can I come up? And he thought she was joking, but he goes to like the window, and sure enough, she's like on the sidewalk in front of his apartment building wanting to come in. Like, again, like, this is something that narcissism, when they're love bombing you, they cannot let you, you can't escape that vortex, and they will not let you at all. So the thing is, if you look at where Chris was in this time, being love bombed by Nikki, and him not really knowing, her playing all innocent and whatever, and making him feel like he can escape his abusive marriage because he's being devalued by another narcissist, and her going, well, I can give you a son, we can get married, we can have the life, we're soulmates, and him being probably very confused. And when they found out that Shanann was pregnant, in the love bombing stage, from Nikki's point of view, from a narcissist point of view, this is, you don't pull your punches when you're in a love bombing campaign for a grade A supply. So she gave him like Oxycontin to give to Shanann, to convince him that if she loses the baby, the boy, I will give you one. Like, this is how evil narcissism can be. And, people don't look at Chris at this point being the victim in this situation at this point. This is before the murder. So, at this point, I look at Chris as being the absolute victim. He's got an abusive wife. He's being, who is a narcissist that's devaluing him. He's being love bombed. And when you're love bombed, you can't resist a love bomb. Being love bombed by this woman, and painting this picture of getting out of this situation. Now, so during this whole love bombing stage, and his wife and his kids are on the East Coast, he had to fly over there to join them after like 4 weeks of being apart. And he was being love bombed the whole time, right? So he has to actually leave the narcissist that's love bombing him and fly across the country to another narcissist who is pregnant with his baby. And Nicole is, I'm sure, planning her most evil deeds And Chris won't admit this, but it's kind of like Captain Obvious. It was Nicole that gave Chris the Oxycontin to feed to Shanann to try to abort her baby. I mean, to all of us, it's very obvious, but he would not tell anybody about that. And I'll circle back on this topic later when Chris goes to trial. But during this time that Chris was with Shanann and his kids for that last week on vacation, the damage and the roadmap had already been laid for what was going to happen next. Nicole had already dug her nails into Chris, and he was not going to escape. He was stuck. He wasn't going to escape Shanann, and he wasn't going to escape Nicole. When you are captured by a narcissist, we all know, anyone listening to this, if you're captured by a narcissist, the escape is near impossible. Okay, it doesn't matter if you want to leave them or you get discarded. Even if you get discarded, there's no escape from pain that you go through from a discard from a narcissist. And if you want to leave a narcissist, especially if there's kids involved, there is no escape from the hell that you will go through. I am part of groups about narcissistic abuse, and the women that are in that group that have kids with the narcissists, they go through absolute hell. And I mean real hell. One of the women's there, she has to be very vigilant about her daughter, because her daughter keeps trying to commit suicide every time she has to go visit her dad, who's a narcissist. I mean, these things are horrific. And there was a man there in my group who has an ex-wife that she was with for 8 years. They've got 2 kids together, and these kids will never be proper functioning adults because their mother abuses them so badly. And like every weekend it's a horrific thing, and he gives all his money to his ex-wife, narcissist wife, and she spends it, guess what, on daycare. Sends them off to daycare because she doesn't want them. She wants to live her own life. So he has to pay his wife, who then pays someone else to watch his kids, and his ex-wife will not let him see his kids. It's horrific. Okay, and there's another woman in my group who her mother's the narcissist, and this woman is almost 50, and she's the one who, she can't come to a meeting without bringing in a box of Kleenex with her because it's always brutal. So when you try to escape a narcissist, if you have kids, you're in for a lifetime of pain, suffering, fighting, bankruptcy. It's going to be something that is almost unsurvivable. And I think that Chris knew this with Shanann and their 2 kids. If he tried to leave her, he would have had to gear up for the fight of his life. And this is a fight that when you parent with a narcissist, you're not just parenting, you're counter-parenting, you're not co-parenting. And remember, you're going to be co-grandparenting as well later on. I mean, it's something that you have to fight for the rest of your life. And depending on the person, I don't think Chris, when he saw that coming down the pike of if he left Shanann and what she would do as a narcissist and use those kids as weapons against him, his family, everyone who knew him, the public, I think he knew enough about Shanann at this point, seeing her mask was completely off. He was being abused and devalued by her. I think he saw the life that would have been laid in front of him from her using because he loved his girls. The thing is, a narcissist doesn't really love their kids. They just need to look like they do and act like they do, and you'll never know unless you're inside the relationship. So Chris knew. He's inside this relationship. He knew that these kids would get abused more and more by their mother as they grow older. The parties that Shanann would throw, there was a woman in my group, she talks about how she started when she was like 5. She noticed that her birthday parties were just way too big and over the top. So her mother would, and just like the parties that Shanann threw, these birthday parties were too big. Hundreds of people would come and all these gifts. and the cakes and the party favors. And the thing is, when it came time to start opening up the gifts, a mother that wants their daughters to have a good birthday, they would like put their daughters and prop them up and like be in front of them to take pictures and let them have their moment. But when you have a narcissistic mother, and I think Shanann did this, she's standing behind them while they're opening up the gift so she can kind of get the spotlight at the same time. But everyone else who's looking in on this would see that she's just this loving mother, so happy and praising her daughter. But when you can recognize a narcissist, Shanann's behind the daughter, watching her open her gift so she can get some of the spotlight. And this woman, and I'm sure this is the woman in my group that was saying this, and year after year, as she's starting to, always have these big parties for her birthday. These parties weren't for her. And afterwards, she's like, okay, she's 5 or 6 years old, like her 6-year-old birthday party. Like her mother would come up to her after the party and say, did you have a good birthday? Did you have fun? Did you like your gifts? Did you like the cake? All these questions about, did she like her birthday party? And she's only like 6 years old. Like, yes, thank you. So much fun. And then the mother would say, good, his mom's going to work really hard for the next 2 months to pay for it because it was really expensive. And to like a 5 or 6-year-old, like this is abuse. It's psychological abuse, and it's very hard to spot, and it's very quiet and personal, and it gets ingrained into your childhood, and you're explaining it to a therapist one day. So this is a kind of abuse you get from a narcissistic mother. I think Chris saw that this was a quiet abuse that was happening to his girls, and it would continue. I remember this other girl saying she didn't want a birthday after a while. She did not look forward to her birthdays, and when she demanded not to have one, she was 9 at the time, her mother went into a narcissistic rage that she didn't want a birthday party because this was something that's going to be taken away from the mother. She went into a narcissistic rage about having to have a party for her birthday. Anyway, like when you're inside these narcissistic relationships and you see like someone like Shanann and the way she is, and knowing the type of battle Chris was going to have to face because he is stuck being devalued by one narcissist and being love bombed by another, and he got put in this situation. And I do think a darkness took over him, and didn't see any type of escape. Because you cannot escape these narcissistic abuses. Even if you do escape, the abuse goes on for the rest of your life. In one way or another, it's very difficult. And I think when he, and there's another element to it as well. So when you're being love bombed and you're in that, and again, you're basically getting hooked on heroin, the type of fear you feel from losing that, I think got displayed to him. So Nicole is love bombing him, giving him the best sex of his life, making him feel like the man, like an absolute man. And Chris being in a situation where that could be taken away, puts you in a state of fear. And when you're looking at another narcissist who's abusing you, you get presented in front of that fear, you're in danger. Okay? You're in absolute danger. I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're a person that might have never heard a fly, but in that situation, I think that was the situation that triggered the murders. Okay? And I do think he got captured by a fear that would not let him go. And so once, the night that the girls got murdered, he, I think, already kind of gave up. There was no escape his abuse that he was enduring from these relationships. And the only way to escape was, in his mind, was to get rid of the focal point of where the abuse was coming from. I don't think he really recognized that Nicole was abusing him with love bombing and sex. When you're in that state, you don't see it as abuse, even though it is. But he did see the abuse from Shanann and the fear of losing the one thing that made you feel more like a man than you probably have ever had in your life, coming from Nicole. That darkness must have taken him, and that's what caused the murders. Because the night that he murdered Shanann, God, when I read the details of what happened, it was like the sloppiest murders I've ever read or heard of. I mean, these were supposedly planned, but what's the end game here? Did you really think things through? Like, it was. I won't get into the details of it, but if anyone who enjoys murder mysteries or enjoys crime stories and things like that, the Chris Watts murders are the sloppiest murders ever. No one was ever going to get away with it. That's why it was like 2 days later he was in jail. Like, it was ridiculous. Even though it was somewhat premeditative, the reason why it doesn't make sense to anybody the way that these murders got done is because of that darkness that took him, of what he was in for the rest of his life and the abuse he was enduring. He didn't, and I don't think anyone who's never been in a relationship with one narcissist, let alone two, would ever understand this. But when Chris Watts didn't really have a murder trial, he confessed. It was very quick because he was in such a dark place, I think. But he was still infatuated and in love with Nikki, because the relationship didn't take its course. He didn't go through all the stages of, okay, yes, you get idealized and love bombed and then you go through the devaluing and discarded stage later on. He didn't go through all those stages, and so he was stuck in the love bomb infatuation stage from her. So he was actually kind of protecting her. He didn't want the police to know that it was her that gave him the OxyContin. He didn't want it to come out in trial about their relationship and put Nikki almost in a bad light because he was still infatuated with her. But after I think the darkness kind of left him and he came out of it and actually came to the light of day again, he actually, I think, wanted to, even being an empath, he actually, I think, still wanted to protect Shanann and the babies and didn't want the world to know that Shanann was a narcissist that was abusing him. So it was completely fast-tracked, and he confessed, he got sentenced, and he went straight to jail in record time. And now I don't think he'll ever get out of jail or start prison. He will spend the rest of his life there, but all people know about is the horrific murders, and that's what people focus on. Oh, they were so good looking, they were so cute. And he just wanted to be with his mistress, and that's where the story ended. And I'm like, I think the layers and depths of this is far beyond what people can imagine, and the only people that can recognize it are those who have survived narcissistic abuse and have gone full circle and healed and can recognize it. I don't think people will ever know the depth of what happened in this entire situation. And so it was someone who could recognize all the little bits of it. I really wanted to just come on here and share my take on it as someone who has survived a narcissistic relationship. And I dare say that my heart goes out to Chris, who, dealt with two narcissists. My last video that I put out was, when Satan fails to destroy you, he'll send in the narcissist. And I think for Chris, Satan tried to destroy him and failed, so he didn't send one narcissist, he sent two. I think that's another reason. I believe that Chris is very religious right now. He's an avid reader of the Bible every day, things like that. But I think that I don't think he's an evil person. I think he's an empath that got abused by narcissists, by two of them. So that is my take, and I know anyone who doesn't know about narcissism and the true horrific reality of being with a narcissist, no one's really going to understand. And I don't even think that Chris or his family or Shanann's family, of course, they're going to defend her, and I actually absolutely expect them to, But I wonder if Chris's family wonders. If Chris's family ever hears this take, feel free to reach out to me. I talk to a lot of people that suffered narcissistic abuse because, believe it or not, Chris's family had to endure a lot of abuse from a narcissist as well, from Shanann. So that's my take on it. I wanted to put this story out there because no one else has yet. Not that I can find. Everyone seems to just want to call actual Chris the narcissist. I'm like, no. Does Chris really want a spotlight on him? He shunned away from the spotlight so much he didn't even want a trial to defend himself. Okay, that's not a narcissist. Okay, a lot of people I think out there got it wrong. I still think, yes, he belongs in prison. He does belong in prison for the rest of his life for his crimes. But you know what? I don't think he's a danger to society. If you wanted Chris to watch, say if I had 2 kids, sure, they're not in danger. But if you want to introduce Nikki to my husband, oh shit, that's a danger, okay? That's where the danger is. Not putting kids near Chris. The danger is putting other men in the vicinity of Nicole, okay? That's the danger. Anyway, thought I'd leave this with a little bit of humor. This was a really dark topic to talk about, Chris Watts, but I thought I'd put it out there. Thank you everyone for listening. Haven't put a video out in a while, and I probably will not for another long while until something else comes across my path that I think I need to put my perspective on. Thank you for ever listening. Please like and share this video if you think anyone will benefit from it, as we are all survivors post-narcissist.